Chair Alfred.
Hi, everybody. It's 6:32. This is welcome to the Human Services Committee meeting of Manhattan Community Board 2. We're going to give it a few more minutes. One of our guests has not yet arrived, and I always like to give a little pad anyway. Do we have quorum? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everyone sign in. Yeah, I know. It's like last minute absences. Here. You know what, it's 6:34 and I think we will just start. We are still waiting for one of our guests, but we can start with introductions and we can introduce one of our guests and she can tell us some things and then we'll manage. So this is the October 30th, October meeting of the Human Services Committee of Manhattan Community Board 2. We will not be meeting in November or December, thanks to Thanksgiving and Christmas, which hobble us every year. We have one agenda item, and that is to hear from SHAP, which is the Street Homeless Advocacy Project. They do outreach throughout the city and also in our district in Washington Square Park. We are expecting a second guest from them, but we'll start out with introductions of the committee and then the first guest who's here. So I'm Susanna Aaron. I'm the chair of this committee.
I'm Ryder Kessler, committee member.
Rachel Yarmolinsky, public member.
I'm Emma Smith, a committee member.
Juliette Kay, committee member.
Ian Berger, committee member.
Arturo Fernandez, committee member.
Great. And Sherry, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Sherry Leone. I work with SHAP.
Speak up so that everyone can.
Okay. I work with SHAP in the Washington Square area specifically. I'm part of a team of 3 or 4 people that go out once a week and spend 3 to 4 hours, sometimes more, with the folks in Washington Square Park and on the streets surrounding Washington Square Park, the unhoused people there. And what we do is we talk with them, we ask them if they would like to go inside, if they would like to accept services, particularly specifically in safe havens. We try to place people in safe havens rather than congregate shelters because the setting there is much more friendly to people, as far as
who have decided to stay who prefer to stay unhoused than enter the shelter system, right?
Well, that's not everybody. So I don't want to make like a monolith out of the people in Washington Square Park.
Right.
There are a lot of individuals who have different needs and different, trauma and different experiences. But for the people that maybe don't want to go to a congregate shelter, they are more, I think they're more inclined to go to a safe haven because it's got less people in a room.
Right.
There are supportive services there, usually on site, and they don't have to get dumped out every day for curfew, right? So they can, just let me know if you're not familiar with the safe haven model, but I assume because you do what you do on this committee, you do know the difference between a congregate shelter and a safe haven.
Yeah.
Yes, we know that if you want to, just some basic things, New York City is required to give shelter to anyone who seeks it. The traditional way of entering shelter is you go to the intake center and then there is an evaluation process and then there's a placement process. I think the city houses 50,000 people that way, maybe. And then, hi, Norman, why don't you pull up the chair right here? And then there are a number of people who are unhoused, who are not in the shelter system. That number is always an estimate, and it's measured by something called the Hope Project, which is an actual venture out into the community on one night in January and there's something about like around 5,000 people
Yeah.
figure, there's around
Somewhere between
5,000
4,500
and 5,000 people who are unhoused. So those are the people that you're talking to, are people who are not going into a shelter at night.
Yeah, and to go back, since Norman just, joined us. Thank you. This is Norman Siegel.
Well, we'll introduce you in just a second.
Okay, but
Finish your thoughts
where
on
we
that.
were when you walked in was that, so the people in Washington Square Park that our team speaks to and engages with, it's not that they don't want to go inside, but, when they see that there's a place that they would check into every 72 hours, and that would not kick them out, that they might have the option of, if this is their neighborhood that they want, that they're in and they like being here and they don't have to, they get placed somewhere far away. So that is a lower barrier for them to accept services. So a lot of times low barrier and people take that to mean there's no rules, at these places, but that's not actually the case. So it's really more about what it is that they need to do to get inside there.
And we have one safe haven in our district. We have no shelters, but we have one safe haven, which is Paul's Place on 14th Street. I'm saying this sort of in part for the transcript. It has 24 beds and yes, the rules are a lot. It's a low barrier to entry
Right.
model intentionally and it's specifically for people who have heretofore been unhoused. And the placement there is a different system than
Yes.
intake. And those people are referred by the outreach teams and so on.
Yeah, and we actually have never placed someone, our team has never placed someone there because it's a different referral system. But with
Your team has never placed what?
our team, our group our SHAP team in Washington Square Park has never placed someone in Paul's Place just because it's a different way of, referring someone. I don't think, our placements aren't eligible to go there for whatever reason. I'm not really sure.
I see. Let's take a step back and why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll give you a little report for the record.
Okay,
The
well, I'm not
lawyer
gonna
in me
read this
always wants to
now,
File something.
But we'll keep this for the report.
My name is Norman Siegel. I went to law school at NYU. I lived on Jane Street, 31 and 61 for many years. I then got married and moved uptown, okay?
You're still welcome.
But I loved living on Jane Street. I've been a civil rights lawyer for 55 years. I worked for the ACLU in the Southern office. A lot of who I am today is because of my experience in the Southern civil rights movement. I worked with a lot of great American icons, from Dr. King all the way down to Emma, Chuck Morgan, Isaiah Williams, my good friend John Lewis taught me about good trouble. I think I am a good trouble person. Some people think I'm a bad trouble person. And I always had this dream, just as we had in the civil rights movement, where many of us in my generation was in the Law Student Civil Rights Research Council summer internship in 1966, almost 60 years ago. And there were 65 of us law students from all over the country to help the lawyers in the South. And the movement continued to not only grow, but it really made a difference in at least the southern states. Rest of the country still hasn't had a civil rights movement as far as I'm concerned. But I wrote a law review article, Villanova Law Review, in I think 1990 about homelessness. I was one of the lawyers for Billy Boggs. Looking around here, maybe half of you remember that name. That was the first homeless person that the media and the public got to know as an individual. Ed Koch picked her up on near Swenson on the Heat Grate on 65th and 3rd, if I remember. And for 84 days, every day when we try to challenge the involuntary commitment, the media was writing about us, and we went all the way to the Court of Appeals. Finally, they released her. I hired her as receptionist at the Civil Liberties Union. And I wrote about street homelessness and what I had learned. And I felt that the parallel on racial justice, we needed to take the same thing on economic justice. and address the street homelessness and the mess that we had in New York. And the image was, and the dream was, could we get volunteers in New York to go out and talk to the homeless? I learned a long time ago, the way you win people over is through trust. Trust is the most important thing. So why would it be any different with the homeless, I thought? So we were able to persuade the Adams administration back on summer of 22, I think. Yeah, we've been doing it a little more than 3 years now. And so we started our first year, and most of the volunteers, I've been in a lot of different things, including at the Civil Liberties Union. I never had a group of people like Sherry, et cetera. They really care, and they're terrific. No egos. People work well together. We have our weekly meetings at 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock. At least one team member of each of the 6 or 7 teams that we have now come tell us what happened the previous week. So we learn what others are doing and see if there's common issues, and there are plenty of common issues.
Can I just take you through some mechanical questions?
Of course,
Do you guys get funding?
they offered it to us. My instinct was, I didn't want people who wanted a job. You get a different kind of person than the people that we attracted. Second, I didn't want all the administrative crap, paperwork. And then finally, even when I ran the Civil Liberties Union and other not-for-profits, it really is a problem when you get public funding, how you have to respond.
So you're not getting public funding. Do you raise any private funding? No donations. So you're just doing this, you're just your time. Okay.
Our heart.
Is SHAP a 501c3 or it's,
No, I consciously set it up as a unincorporated association. I did it for legal purposes as well as for all the reporting stuff. We've also been offered money from private people. When the banks were raising money because they didn't want people in their vestibules. We were approached. I don't want to do that.
I see. Right.
I don't want to throw people out. What I want to do is and here's the mechanical thing. Our premise is if you take the same people on the same day with the same 2 hours and the same location, that's the beginning of winning trust from the homeless. I tell the story about Charlie. I do Staten Island Ferry on the Manhattan side. I live now on 72nd on the west side. I'm still waiting so I could get 6 people on the Upper West Side, which people would think, oh, sure, you're going to get clearly people up there. We haven't been able to get them. But there's a
Any
church.
volunteers? You have
Right. Yeah, we only want volunteers. Last year, we had 107 volunteers. And that was great. Half of them come from the CUNY system at Hunter and Baruch College.
Mhm.
So our teams go anywhere from Monday morning at Baruch down on the 21st Street and down on the east side to Washington Square Park on Tuesday mornings from 10:30 to 12:30. Sometimes they're there till 1 or 2 in the day. Wednesday nights, we go to Grand Central Station and the Upper East Side. Thursday nights are our most active night, 32nd and 7th, where we have a team there, Staten Island Ferry team and the Penn Station team. So we're now doing Monday through Thursday.
So how many teams, so how many volunteers do you have now? About 100?
We have about 100, but that doesn't mean, one of the premises is that no volunteer is expected or required to be there every week.
Got it.
You can't get them if
Right.
that's what you want.
Right.
People have real lives. So I want for each team at least a half a dozen people who are committed to be part of it. So the Hunter team has like 30 volunteers. They get some credit at school.
I'm going to
I
guess
think.
that that's, yeah.
So we tap into that. We've worked with NYU, we work with Columbia. CUNY students are more receptive, I think, because they identify more with the people that are out on the street than the Columbia students or the NYU students.
And how many locations, you started to
We're now in
describe some
7
locations.
locations.
7 locations in Manhattan. not just Manhattan?
No, we have a couple of people in Queens, a former homeless person leading that one day. We have a freelancer, a guy named Gavin, who ran a similar program in San Antonio, Texas, fell in love with a woman in New York. He moved to New York. So he heard about us. He kind of goes out whenever he wants to go out because he knows how to do this even better than
Yeah,
I. So we have 7 locations, but our dream is to be citywide.
Right.
We've gone, you're the 3rd community board that invited us.
Oh,
My dream is to go to every community board. But here's the bad news. We went to community board 5 in Manhattan.
mhm.
We went to community board 14 in Brooklyn. Sherry and I went. It was really good meetings. People were excited, no follow-up.
It's hard. I mean, because our role, we're not a good place to recruit volunteers. We're a good place to disseminate information and to learn, but we're not a good.
We had a
well,
guy.
you can say-
We had a guy who was the president of one of his buildings. This is probably about a year and a half ago, who went to a couple of meetings. What was it? Police community meetings,
Yeah.
was complaining about the problem of people in the street and various things. I went with him and looked at the streets that he was talking about, Gay Street and a couple of other streets. And I said, we could do it. So get me a half a dozen people
Yeah.
from your building. I'll come, I'll train them, and I'll work with you.
Right.
I would love it.
It's hard to do.
He didn't even do that. But if
We might be able to help connect you to some local, I mean, Sherry knows everybody, so it's really hard to imagine that we would know more than you do at this point, especially since I see Sherry at every meeting of the Village Interagency Task Force.
Sherry's great.
But, that's certainly, for example, Open Hearts Initiative, is that something that, I don't even know if that still
They
exists.
don't actually do
Yeah.
outreach. So they don't do the outreach. They do many good things.
Yeah.
It's really
I'm very
not
involved with them.
places.
Yeah, they don't do street outreach,
They
but
don't do
they
street
are
outreach.
active. Yeah.
Now, what should have happened, and the administration failed on a lot of ways, in my opinion, but one of the things they failed, they didn't know how to use this program. Because there's numerous times that they're talking about the issue of street homelessness. Our success rate in the 3 years and 11 weeks that we've been doing this, we've interacted with 2,118 people. And we've actually been able to place or refer voluntarily 1,029 people.
To shelter,
We don't send anyone to the shelter.
to safe haven.
Safe haven, stabilization beds, mental health programs, drug programs, and about 10% for job training. Because there are people out there who, if they're given an opportunity, they can get back on their feet and do that. We won't do shelters because the history of people who are out on the street, they've all been there before.
Yes.
They've been beaten up, they've been sexually abused, their property has been stolen, their identity has been stolen. And if I talk to people and say, do you want to go to a shelter?
They'll turn you off.
Also, you can't even the first time, there's a guy, Charlie, I always cite his story. It took me 10 times. And without sounding arrogant, I'm pretty good in talking to people. I've sensed out. I don't start and say, do you want to go to a shelter tonight?
Right.
Do you want to go safe haven? I go, hi, my name's Norman. I'm a civil rights lawyer. What's your name? Okay. If they tell me, fuck off, man, I leave. But 5% of the people tell me that. I can take that. Even non-homeless people tell me exactly to do that.
Yes.
So,
I've had that.
and people in the training, they say, well, how do I begin conversation? I said, how do you begin any conversation? Introduce yourself. It's like, I don't know where it's going to go.
I have some other questions. The city, what is the role of the city in working with you? Do they facilitate things for you? Do they talk to you? Do you coordinate with other agencies or other not-for-profits? Like how are you part of a network?
I wanted it to be initially a joint public-private project. So in this room, unless you're recording it, it's not easy.
We are recording it.
Okay,
It's a public meeting.
fair.
Sorry.
My words, no, use my words.
Use your words carefully.
There are some people in the government administration, even the commissioners and some deputy mayors. They don't get it or they don't care. enough. They're not willing to do the kind of things. But we work with them. We give them credit more than they deserve. So when you talk about facilitating, yeah, publicly they facilitate. Almost every other week, I got to have an argument with them about they didn't provide the transportation for us. They didn't provide the data that we feed them so that we know exactly the metrics of what's going on. When I say 1,029, that's our basis, but some of our people where we can't get transportation, they're going to go to the placement, the safe haven or the stabilization bed on their own. And I'm not sure they get there. So I've asked them to tell me, you have the information. So if I send Johnny to a safe haven and he's going on his own, as opposed to when we get your transportation to take him there, can you confirm that he got there? Because I don't want to give out misinformation.
Right.
I don't get that.
Is that from DOHMH or is that from the mayor's office?
DHS.
DHS, okay, DHS. So
So
DHS is who you ostensibly have a relationship, with, a
Right.
communication
within
relationship.
DHS, they have a thing called military terms, Joint Command Center.
You guys are.
And they're the people.
I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
Right. Those are the people who, when I'm out on the street tonight and you tell me that you're willing to go, though on the first night, you're not going to do it. Why would you tell me that? Most of the men out there are black and brown. I'm a white guy, Jewish. Why should they trust me? They've been betrayed by so many people over the years. So in the first conversation in our training, it's just beginning to talk. Charlie, it took me 10 times before Charlie eventually said, okay, Siegel, I'm ready to go. Wow. So he came back about 6 months. Came back 6 months to Staten Island Ferry. I saw him on the bench and I said, Charlie, what are you doing here? Are you still at the safe haven? We had a safe haven on the Bowery. He said, I'm no longer there. I said, what happened? He said, they got me a single room on 21st Street. I'm now there. And he was beaming. He had his sister there. He always used to tell me, which a lot of homeless people, that they don't want to have the stigma of admitting that they're homeless. Charlie kept telling me when I said, what are you going to do tonight? And it's cold tonight. I'm going to stay at my sister's place. There's so many homeless people tell me about their sister. So with Charlie, I didn't think she existed. So that night he was talking to me, he was beaming, he looked good, he was clean shaven. He said, my sister's here. I said, your sister's here. She came, I hugged her, we talked.
That's
It was,
such a victory moment.
well, I didn't need the train to go home. I could have flown home just on my own. And it's still in me because helping Charlie is just, when I do my ACLU cases and all that kind of stuff, it's abstract law. This is real. I know that I helped Charlie. I can touch it. And a lot of the people in SHAP are like that. The 2 hours, I don't get home sometimes to 10:30. The people on 32nd Street, Mark tells me he gets home like around midnight because he brings his car. He's one of the few people who has a car in the city, and he drives the last person because he doesn't trust the transportation. He takes them to Isidro, the leader from Hunter. He gets home sometimes 1 a.m. because he walks with the people to the place if we don't have the transportation.
So tell me about the Joint Command and tell me about how the transportation setup is supposed to work.
It's supposed to work well. With the Joint Center Command, we have their number. The people who answer the phones know who we are, and they're very supportive of us. The higher you go, I'm not sure. We've invited deputy mayors and commissioners to come out with us. We've invited the mayor to come with us. They don't come.
So if you make a connection with someone and
We
the
give-
person wants to go into shelter, you're able
Safe haven.
into safe haven, I'm sorry. You're able to, you call the Joint Command and you
We give them,
or email and
And they
they,
have a list of available places.
they have a computer. First step. We have to give, and it's easy because when the people say, so what do I have to give you? I said, just your name and your date of birth. Now, sometimes system wants social security numbers. I explain to them, you don't have a right to that. We're not going to ask that stuff. So we go back and forth on that. So I don't know what they're doing with all the other people that they pay to do this stuff. Maybe they don't challenge it. We've challenged lots of things where they've changed it. Our theory in the Street Homeless Advocacy Project, the key word is advocacy. We advocate for the people on the street. And then as we've developed knowledge and experience out there, we then are advocates to the system. We're trying to change the system. The movement now to go to single and double safe havens and stabilization beds, that's part of our advocacy to the system, to the mayor, to his people. And they're moving in the right direction, but it took over 40 years to get there.
So when you call the joint command, I'm sorry.
So they go and look.
Back to the mechanics.
They look
at
in
the
that
list.
computer to find out whether or not the person has been in the system. For example, if the person got thrown out of the system because he had a fight,
Uh-huh.
or if there's any kind of violence or problem, they don't want to put the person back in a general system. They'll find a special place for that person. So that takes supposedly 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour.
That's a
Why?
guess.
And why?
Yeah.
If it's all in a computer, I mean, I'm a technological Neanderthal, but you should be able to press a button, get my name, Norman Siegel, in the computer if you did it right, and it should tell you when I was in the system, if I was in the system.
So what you're describing, what I'm hearing is a gap or a lag or a inefficiency in joint command.
It's not clear why, right? It's not clear
Right.
whether it's understaffing.
I don't think it's
not clear
staffing.
whether it's this
Record
situation
keeping.
of the system with the,
The system.
if you picture someone at central command, like looking
Yeah,
at this
yeah,
like
yeah.
air traffic control thing, and where they can see availabilities like it's a hotel check-in system.
Start off with
So
the
joint
entire
command is
system is a
hearing-
mess.
The joint command is hearing from you, and I presume also the Manhattan Outreach Coalition and whoever, and
Whoever else is
MTA
doing it.
outreach, whoever else is
Right.
doing outreach, PHS outreach, whoever, all those teams that are, and is there ostensible commitment that they will provide transportation for this person? Or
No.
not necessarily, that's not part of the commitment or not part of the agreement?
I had a fight with them and I fought with them in the first year and said, we've lost so many people because you knew we're going to be at Staten Island Ferry from 7 to 9. Why do I have to call you at 8:15 and wait an hour or an hour and a half to get a, why don't you put the van there at 7 o'clock? You know we're going to be there every week. So they did that finally. So I got it, but I don't have it for the other teams.
But they haven't said to you, "Oh, sorry, we don't provide transportation." They have not said, they don't say that. They say, well, we'll provide transportation, but then it doesn't pan out.
Sometimes it doesn't work.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Correct.
So it's spotty, but
And
they
then,
don't say that's not our responsibility.
but then give you another example. So one night we got one person at around 8:30 that agreed to go in. And so I asked for the transportation. It's now 9:45. There's still no transportation. And then what comes? A bus that could have like 30 people.
Right.
I mean, I went crazy that night. Bob, why? I've asked them
Taxi.
to allow me to, well, sometimes I pay out of my own to put people in the taxi. It's the only way I know that they can, then I can get home. So we've talked about, why don't we set up a contract with Uber or Lyft or the Black Drivers Association? I once
A
represented them.
city contract?
Yes, that we don't want, they should.
Yeah. No, I-
Tell me who you're paying. And I want to know the names of those people. I want to know, why is a bus that could have 30 or 40 people being used to take one person?
Right.
First of all, the person, the homeless goes on that bus. All of a sudden, he's really nervous. If you got on a bus by yourself and you don't know where they're going, and it's a bus for 35, 40 people.
I know, it's not a good feeling.
Some people want to come off right away.
So you're describing a lag or an inefficiency at the Joint Command Center, just in terms of processing it, and then some sort of inefficiency or lag or snag when it comes to the actual transportation that they
With one
like to
qualifier.
provide.
One qualifier, the way it should be. If the way it is now, they do a good job, but that's lowering the standard. They don't win by default, if you know what I mean. So part of our job is to keep pushing them. And with this administration, we've succeeded maybe incrementally. The new administration that will come, whether it's X, Y, or Z, that's a challenge for us. First of all, are they even going to want us to continue? It doesn't cost them anything.
Right.
We do that. My hope is that whoever gets in will begin to recognize that there's a value in what we're doing, and then help us go to the community boards citywide because that's the city structure that you could do. And if even if we got 25% of the community boards to agree to try to, how did we get Sherry? Because Batra set up a meeting. We're at that library on 6th Avenue,
Mhm.
and she and a couple other people became part of the team. And if we could get the citywide community boards, because it seems to me, I'm a big supporter of the community boards. They should be more powerful than they are now. You shouldn't only be doing, the permits for the bars and things of that sort. You should take on all these substantive issues as well.
So, sorry, I mean, feel free to.
I have two
jump in.
questions that are more mechanical than
Okay.
existential.
I'll try to be mechanical.
Just to connect the dots between the call and the lookup and the transportation piece. So they put in my name and my birth date. They see that I haven't been thrown out, that I'm a good candidate for a safe haven.
Then they give us
They have a list of available
vacancies.
beds, of vacancies. And is it just, do they then give you, do they say the placement for this person should be the nearest one, the one where the vacancy has been longest? Like or they just choose?
Well, no,
You don't know.
the only question they ask us, that we ask the people, do they have a preference to what borough they want to go to?
Okay.
Try to place people.
Most of the homeless people say, I don't care.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they say, okay, we have a placement, it's at this place, and either wait and we'll send a car or a bus.
First we have to do, because it's not my decision, I then have to go back to the homeless person.
Right.
And tell the person what the option is.
Yeah.
If we have on the cell phone, we could show them the thing. I've been to a lot of these places. So on the places that they say, okay, I can vouch for the person.
Yeah.
That it's a good place. I've been there. The staff is good.
Right.
And then it's up to that person to decide whether they want to go, because that's the voluntary thing.
So let's say that Ryder then decides that he does want, he's in a good
Yeah.
eligible candidate and he wants to go. Then do they say, we'll send you a
No,
vehicle?
then we call back and we say, okay, now, if they do it at 7:00 with the car, now that I told them, and we have a car there.
Right.
We put the person in the car. Then when I have to make a decision, do I send the car with that one person?
Mhm.
Or do I think
Right.
I can wait 30 or 40 minutes to
Yeah.
put a second and a third person?
Yeah.
Be more efficient. If the car is not there, we call, and then sometimes we have to wait an hour.
Yeah.
For the car to get there. Now, don't tell me why it takes from, if they're at Times Square to get down to Staten Island Ferry,
2 hours, yeah, right.
an hour.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
So-
We don't have that option in Washington Square Park. We don't have a car waiting for us, so our interaction is a little bit different.
Yeah, I got it because I think they're afraid of me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Here's my other question, because thinking about the next administration or just generally the success or usefulness of this model, clearly you're having a lot of success building the relationships and building the trust. I think a question I have is, if you and also the Manhattan Outreach Consortium and other folks are going to Washington Square and connecting with folks who are there on an ongoing basis, is there a concern from anyone that there's discontinuity because maybe they'll build a relationship with you, but then they're not quite ready to go in yet, but then the next touch they get isn't from SHAP, it's from someone else, and that, is there
Is that a problem or a help?
yeah, is it good or bad or
The
neutral?
model in my opinion is flawed. The Staten Island Ferry is a guy who's like the leader,
Mhm.
but I don't think he's homeless. But he shows up there most of the time. He goes around, he calls me Rev. I keep telling him I'm not a reverend, I'm just a lawyer,
Turtleneck.
all right?
He's saying red, he means
But in the civil rights movement, that's a positive, right?
Yeah.
Now, he goes around and tells the homeless people, it's at Island Ferry on the Manhattan side, there's a core that are always there, but it changes each Thursday night. He goes around and tells them, this guy and his people,
Are
if you're
trusted.
serious,
Yeah.
work with them. He badmouths the teams that get paid to do it.
Mhm.
And I keep telling him, no, don't do that. The city wears orange
Mm.
shirts.
Mm.
Hochul's team wears purple. They wanted to give us shirts and hats. We said, no way. They also wanted us to work with the cops. We said, no way.
Mm.
We've been doing this for over 3 years. We've never had a violent incident from anyone yet. We had one incident where some guy, and I probably would have not opposed if they wanted to take him in involuntarily, where he was screaming and yelling at two white guys. I think it was more of a racial issue. It was almost 9 o'clock, and these two students, instead of going over and asking and creating the foundation for the ultimate question, do you want to go in or are you homeless? They went over to him. It was like a little before 9. I guess they want to go, and they said to him, do you need a place to stay tonight? And the guy, he just verbally went off. I had to intercede, calm him down, tell him to go home. So it's kind of a thing with street people that you got to understand. And it took me a while to understand the street culture and how to interact with the people. First question I'm asked when we start talking, do you work for the city? No, I get 10 points. Next question, do you get paid for this? No, I get 100 points for that one. Then they open up. So who are you and why are you doing this? There it is. Then it gives me an opportunity to make my pitch.
So a couple more questions.
Okay.
Are there like organizations like yours?
Nope.
They're not. So when the relationship that you have with the city, with DHS, where they don't fund you, but they acknowledge you and
They authorize us to do what we're doing.
they authorize you to do what you're doing.
Not of just anyone out there just can't call JCC and be like, hi, got somebody for me.
Got it.
It took me a long time before they would allow us to not only, I'm one of the few people that actually gets on a weekly basis the vacancies.
So, so you're not aware of any other organizations that are authorized to do this other than
That aren't already.
They have
There
contracts.
are
Contracts.
okay.
Those, the ones
So
that you
there
know
are
about.
contracted ones, right? Like
Yeah, breaking ground, soldered,
Right.
Let me jump in on that, and maybe it's a mechanical issue, maybe not. The first year, we basically were able to do 1 out of 3 people that we interacted with. Second year and the third year, 1 out of 2. So far in the 11 weeks of our 4th year, it's 2 out of 3. And that's happening because we've gotten better at doing this. And the people in the venues that we go to, they spread the word. I know this sounds silly, but I've had times on Thursday nights where people make appointments to meet with us. How does that happen? We get a guy, you go in, and we put him in the Brooklyn Welcome Center, which was a good place. They ended it this with bad decision. So you go in and then you tell your friends,
that you had a good experience.
there's that guy Siegel and a thing called SHAP. Go. So then you call me and say, my friend John wants to meet with you. Can he go on Thursday? Tell him to come at 7:15. And I get there and he's waiting. He's waiting. Even my clients come to my office. I say, meet me at 7:15. They don't get there at 7:15. So what it tells me is that there is an opportunity if sensitively and respectfully developing the relationship with the people, we can get easily a half of the 4,300 people who are out on the streets off the streets.
Now, let me ask you, the data that you described, are you guys collecting that
Yeah.
data? You collected. So
Yeah, we whenever we interact,
So-
we submit the results of that interaction
So-
into this. What's called a
okay,
metric.
I just want to say that is huge.
Yeah.
Because during COVID, we had a lot of activity in Washington Square Park, and Gail Brewer had a very nice idea, which was to get a lot of groups already doing outreach or having a presence in Washington Square Park to stagger their schedule so that there would always be someone in the park. There was no extra money for them to do this, and the thing that it lacked was data collection, no data collection. And so if you're, for me, I'm thinking, is that a good use of people's time or not? I have no idea, right? It's nice to talk to people. Does it do anything? I have no idea. And they were not able, because they were stretched too thin, to collect data. So the fact that you collect data
You
is,
have to have
I think,
data.
very valuable.
You have to have metrics.
Yeah, and I think-
And we have a graduate from Columbia, and she doesn't do outreach with us, but we feed her our metrics. She created it so that we could do it off our cell phones as opposed to
Mhm.
paper stuff. And every Thursday afternoon, we get the weekly report, and we do it so that we know. Now, the other
Does
thing,
the city receive your data?
we give them the report.
They have it by default because we have to, we have to request placement, so they do have.
But we do it-
Name, date of birth,
but we-
everybody.
But we do an
Not
annual.
from you. They don't attribute it to you necessarily.
Oh, they do actually.
Oh.
They didn't in the beginning, but now they do.
No, they do it, but
They do.
we do an annual report.
Oh.
And you should go to our website.
Yes.
SHAP.
Right now.
Promise to send that to everybody.
So-
We can get it.
I don't think any of them read it.
The city doesn't. Okay.
Because I go to we meet with the commissioners and the deputy mayors involved, DHS, DSS, mayor's office, et cetera.
Mayor's office of mental
We meet
health.
them, we meet
Brian Stetton.
first, we meet the best, well,
Do
we
you
have
meet-
problems with
Meet with
him.
Brian Stetton? No.
Yes.
Okay.
We have diametrically opposed views with Brian,
Oh.
but I have we talk to each other.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So earlier you said something about not specifically working with Pulse Place on 14th. Was that just per your kind of, what you were saying is you first go through the JCC command center and then they might end up at Pulse Place, or do they never end up at Pulse
Theoretically, they
Place?
could, and I see that there's another member of our group who's not working in Washington Square Park, but she says she's placed someone at Paul's Place, but it just
It's not
or whatever,
here.
it just hasn't happened.
But it's
okay.
probably a function of lack of vacancies at Paul's Place.
And that
because
too,
Paul's Place
because it's a
is-
wonderful place for people.
But I think, and that's like when we think about what is the community board's role, I think things like there should be more safe havens in this community district is something we could be advocating for. If we say like,
Yep.
maybe there are people who are refusing placement because they'd have to go too far, but if they could be closer to home, to where they're coming from, they might accept placement. That's the kind of thing we can advocate for to the policymakers.
Yeah,
And-
what is it about the safe havens that have low vacancy rates that would imply, and I don't really know this for a fact, but would imply that there's a good retention there? Because that's a good thing, right? So what is it about
Yeah.
those places that keeps people there?
But I'm
Before-
I
concerned
imagine
about-
everything must have a low
Yeah,
vacancy.
my
Our
understanding
concern is that there's just
safe
not enough of
havens
them.
generally have extremely low vacancy rates and that, have very high long-term stay rates relative to congregate shelters. So
Probably
difference
right.
between 90% plus and 60% plus. But maybe you all know from this work that is there high variance in the quality and vacancy levels at various safe havens?
Yes,
There is.
yeah.
Do you ever get a no, there's no vacancy? I'm just curious.
Yes,
Okay.
in Washington Square Park, we have gotten it more times than I've.
Tuesday mornings are harder than the evenings, is my experience with regard to vacancies. We still don't know why we keep asking them to give us the data on that. But on your question,
Yeah.
you can do so much more. Give you an example. We've put together with a law firm pro bono a proposal to use eminent domain. Seize the vacant hotels or hotels that are basically not
Yeah.
really functioning. And the mayor loved the idea, so we put it together. And then he sent it to his council, his deputy mayor, and his housing czar. And then the court council got involved. It took 2 months with me calling the mayor in his office saying, what happened to that proposal? This is a public crisis. It fits right into eminent domain. The law allows the state to condemn the property, pay a fair market to the owners. They would have jumped at it because they're losing money. This is a great way out. And then the state can give it to the city, and the city then can decide whether to give it to a private person or a not-for-profit.
Mhm,
So it's ideal.
mhm.
I said, let's do one or two, 50 to 75 people. Part of the problem on the Upper West Side when they put people in a hotel is that the guys had nothing to do in the day. So they went out,
Sure.
they stood on the street corners, some people drank,
Services.
and it was terrible. And the community got real up in arms. But why not use the day, almost like a college curriculum? Create films about the civil rights movement, inspire people, especially men of color, that there's hope. Teach them how to read and write, have a literacy program there. There's so much that you can do on a pilot and then begin to expand that stuff. We finally met with the housing czar and the Clark Council, and in less than an hour, Bob Hayes and I, Bob Hayes is the person who created the right to shelter at the Coalition of Homeless, they dismissed it. We wrote back and said, well, give us reasons on it. They ignored it and went back to the mayor. He kind of defended his people rather than look at the merits. If we had a community board support system, we would have come to the community boards and said, what do you think about this idea? And put some pressure on that. You got to start thinking about systemic changes, because putting the Band-Aid on this stuff, even our project, we're limited. So, all right. So in 3.5 years or 3.25 years, we've gotten a little more than 1,000 people off the street, but it's this much of a bigger problem. I think
Well, that would
knowing
be
the city-
25%. That would be 25%. Well, not quite 25%, but that's
I
20%.
I think that the city of New York now, as always, there's so many good people that if you put together a team of people that are reflective of the city, so it can't be just white guys anymore. So you have that kind of team that's going out and asking people to volunteer 2 hours a week. The volunteers from SHAP, they write stuff. You read the report, read the students' point. It makes me cry sometimes when I read that stuff, because it's showing that people want to be involved. Same thing, part of the civil rights movement that I watched. People came because they want to be involved and they were fulfilled. They got validated themselves. So if we can get community boards to begin to be part of this stuff, whether the new administration wants to do it or not, we can do it together. And the new administration, and one of them, I think, the three that are in consideration and the one who's probably going to win, in my opinion, they're open to this kind of stuff. And I've learned in this experience, we need some people who could blow the horn for us as well.
So let me ask you another thing, which was, I just forgot what I was going to ask you. Oh, training. So you've described a methodology that you guys have developed over time, and I think you feel that that's a more effective methodology than others are using. Has there been any interest on your part, to maybe use that as training for people who have different relationships with the city? Those who are
The
contracted.
contracts.
Yeah, the contracted workers.
My God, when Bob Hayes
Or
and
the
I,
contracted not-for-profits or the employees.
give you the reality. When Bob Hayes and I announced with the mayor that we were going to do this stuff, I got phone calls threatening us by other people. Don't move in on our turf. They were threatened by the fact that they thought that somehow because we were doing this for free, that the city would start cutting back on them.
Contracts.
That is not happening.
That is not
Or
happening.
at least it's not happening because of us.
And second, I've watched them at Staten Island Ferry, especially Hochul's team. They just, what they'll do is they'll tell people to get off the subway when it pulls into the last stop. First of all, if someone's sitting on the seat alone, they have a right to do that. They can't tell them to get off. And they do it because they're black and brown. They wouldn't do it to me if I was sitting there dressed the way I am now. So the homeless people pick that up. They understand. I mean, they're street smart, and some of them are even educated, but they've went down.
But one area that we wonder about, that I'm thinking about as an expansion of services, is to replicate your methodology and expand. I am going to get to you in Washington Square Park. I want to hear a lot about Washington Square Park. But that's another.
What role does the community board, or can the community board and this committee play in trying to advocate and inform people about the method that we use, about the outcomes of the types of interactions we have, success rates, where people end up? It's all part of
And
the
do
same
you
discussion.
guys coordinate your work at all with any of the other outreach teams, whether it's city, state, or not-for-profit contracted? Do you ever have meetings with them other than at the
You
VITF?
have more contact with the other teams.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have formal meetings where we plan, about specific individuals, but I can. I mean, I'm free to, both at the ITF meetings and if I come across people doing outreach in the park when we're out there, try to get them, on board. I have called caseworkers for people there, because if they know who their caseworker is, I can call a caseworker, even if that person is not attached to a transitional shelter at the moment. Because sometimes people will form a relationship, and then if they get, if they're out on the street again and they have that relationship, and that wouldn't actually encourage them to go back inside.
One thing I've wondered is, there are all these entities that are doing outreach,
Yeah.
and my question is always, well, are they talking to one another? Because it seems like that would be a lot of possibility for inefficiency.
But they're
if they're
assigned
not.
different areas to do their work. You're not going to have two contractors doing it, Staten Island Ferry. We have one there. But let me give you a little
There's plenty
example.
in the village in Washington Square,
I think what maybe Susanna is asking is because in Washington Square Park,
for example.
breaking
as an
ground,
example.
we might see breaking ground out there. We will see harm reduction teams there. We will also
Station,
see,
like that.
Goddard people there who are canvassing for their clients. That has actually happened. So
Well, I wonder, like,
There's
what a
no-
more formal,
But
what a more
it isn't a
formal.
formal
What do you mean
agreement.
by
There isn't.
thing for their clients?
Well, if they can't locate someone that's on their caseload, they'll look at places that they normally would find that person. And so if they haven't been in touch with them, they'll come to Washington Square Park or to the other streets or in other known locations where they've seen that person before. And I actually have helped, and some people on our team have too, where if somebody from one of those organizations in the Manhattan Outreach Consortium is looking for someone and we've seen them, I have communicated that to that
Right.
person. So yeah, it's
In
informal.
an informal.
It's
right.
informal.
I wonder if you think that there would be more efficiency if there was something more formal.
I mean, I think the continuum of care and the follow through
It's a challenge.
I think that's
Oh.
necessary. I would advocate for that. What does it look like? I mean, that is the thing. It's like if you lose someone, which will happen, there should be
Who else
a
can catch 'em?
way, that also that, and also, but without really threatening a person's,
Yeah, no, I know.
trust that's been built up between whoever it is that's interacted with them in
Yeah,
a positive way.
But there's also the number game. Charlie, the 10 times that I interacted with him, I counted as one interaction. There are other people who counted as 10 interactions. And when
That's
I
another,
challenged the city on that, their answer was, we have to demonstrate that we're interacting with as many people as we are. My answer to them was bullshit. The answer is, how many people do we get off the streets? And you're playing a numbers game then.
interesting.
But I think, that is connected
I
to
wonder if
what
there
I
couldn't
was
be something in the
thinking, which
middle.
is kind of like, it's helpful to know that it takes 10 conversations with Charlie.
I don't have anyone else. I use that one as a.
No, we're just saying that, but we're saying
But I
that, for
think-
example,
Charlie's unique.
if the data collection
Right.
said, we made 40 contacts tonight, but 10 of them were with people we've already met with before.
Right.
Then you would have.
Or we talked to
breakdown.
these 20 people, one we actually referred, but we have records, we talked to Jane, and then I think the ideal is like, then when Goddard is going out the next day, they can look and say like, oh, SHAP talked to Jane last night and she seemed close, but not all the way. We're going to try to see if we can find her. Because
Very
I think part.
But you got to come back with the same people.
Yeah.
See, that's the key.
And
Because
also,
you got to build that trust. It's not going to happen on a night or two. And the last thing is that what's always embarrassing is I go over to someone and I start talking and they say, you think I'm homeless, eh? And I said, well, that's what we're focused on. And they go, I'm not homeless. And I feel really bad about that. So you got to be very careful on that. And it's the sensitivity that some of the people pick up. And the fact that you come back, even the people who are, the regulars who are not going. I mean, there's a woman there, I've talked to her so many times. She's not coming in. And she keeps telling me that she's going to get her money from the lawyer that the case she won. I don't think there is a case. But I always go by. I always talk to her. I ask her if she's okay. I'll get her a cup of coffee. My limit is, fortunately, there's a Wendy's there. My limit is like $7.23 for a hamburger and a Coke. But you do that kind of stuff so that people then begin to see that you care about them. And then it comes back
That's kind of why I was asking earlier, is it a problem if multiple service providers are all in the same place? Because maybe you're building trust with someone and then between the last time you see them and the next time someone comes who is wearing a purple shirt, who, and then maybe it's a problem. Maybe it would be better if you had sole ownership of.
Well, the
we
other
can't
thing
do it
is-
every day of the week. We don't, that's a full-time
It's a
job.
theoretical problem. I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
real or not, because the other thing is that, theoretically, although we've never tried this either, is like, maybe there's not formal meetings between these different organizations that are doing outreach, but if we go back to the person who is unhoused and say, I know that Amanda is gonna come and see you tomorrow.
Right.
And we say, oh, do you know who Amanda is? You know,
Right.
Then there's then a little bit more of a personal kind of like, I can hand
Building
this
a
person to that person, and it's not
The
just like,
trust is transferable.
I'm gonna
a
just
little
tell
bit,
Amanda
yeah.
to go find that
Right,
person, and then you don't know what that, what that relationship is, and.
So it does
Yeah.
beg a question, I mean, it begs an interesting idea or thought about whether there would be benefit for some form of collaboration so that maybe there's continuity between one outreach worker and another, or, like at the VITF, they come and they have a list of 12 people, who has seen so-and-so, who's seen Willie, and everybody who's had a point of contact with that seems to be like one forum where there's collaboration, but.
Yeah, and I say the question there is the continuous contact and presence of everyone that comes through that person's path a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, that is
Which is probably depends on the
that is
person.
a question, to really debate. I mean, you would think, I don't know, I don't think this now because I'm doing it.
Right.
But
But it also
before I started
depends.
doing it, I would be like, oh, that's probably great that there's 45 people coming in the space of 3 days to check in on this person.
Right.
But I think that there has been.
Although if you
some-
had collaboration, you might be able to say, I've been in touch with Jane,
Yeah, but they don't like,
beg off
people don't
Jane,
like that.
because
Some
I'm,
people don't like that.
It's potentially.
You
leave
can't,
Jane alone.
we have a limit that the most you can approach someone is 3 people. If you have anything more than that, the person
Overwhelming.
overwhelmed. You're dealing with very fragile people and they get very paranoid quickly. So the best thing to do, we try to have a man and a woman. If you do have a person of color and a white guy or a white gal, that's the best dynamic. Or better yet, we have about a half a dozen of our 100 so volunteers that are former homeless.
I have a question on.
They're very effective because they tell the person what happened to them.
Right, here.
I'm trying to get Charlie to come out with us. He'd be the ideal.
Yep, on the 50% roughly, and we're now reaching 66%, congratulations on that. When you say,
Actually, 63.
63%, congratulations. The referral placement, so that's at the person level, that's not at the interaction level. And that only is when that person arrives at the safe haven or
No, sometimes
or the other services that you've referred them to.
of the 166 that we've done so far, really near the square count, 23 of the 166, which is 14%, were referrals. What's a referral? Referral is when we send someone to a drug program or to a
Mental health.
mental health program or a job training. Job training, we send to the Doe Fund. And so, or there was a woman, a lot of people have vouchers. And so there's one woman who, she Latina, she barely spoke English. So I gave her, JCC helped me and told me where they have contracts for certain people that give you information about where you can go. Because in that system, the voucher that they have, where do they go? What landlord, what building, what neighborhood is available? So she didn't know any of that stuff. So I referred her to the reference that JCC. So when I filled out the metrics, it's not a placement, it's a referral.
Okay.
The story on that one, on your question, was I said, so what happened? So she said, I called them, no one returned the call. I said, call again. And then finally she called and she said they couldn't help her. So even some of the referrals are terrible. The people, look, when people argued housing, that's not true. It's much more complicated. Billy Boggs, my client, when she was out there, 1987, 88, there were landlords calling and saying, I'll give her a single room on it. And I had to say to them, look, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. She's not ready for that. She couldn't hack it. And so there are a lot of people that I deal with especially Staten Island Ferry, they're not ready yet to be able to do their, and I'm worried about Charlie, maybe he can pull it together. But there are people, they need that support services as an interim step before they can go on their own. Now, do I think they can go on their own? Yes. Once they get support over a period of time, not a day or a week, about weeks and months. And that's the investment that no one really wants to make. So in the bigger issue, I think the last thing is, and where community boards could be helpful, the agreement about the right to shelter was signed by the city and the state. Kathy Hochul says they never signed it. I'll tell one story which was amazing. When I talked to one of the lawyers in the city, they said, well, the state didn't sign it. I said, did you read the settlement? Yeah. I said, what page are you talking about? She said, well, where the city signed and the Coalition for the Homeless signed. I said, did you turn the next page? That's where Bobby Abrams signed. That's the state. So they agreed to that. Oh, I mean, so that just blew my
You're
mind.
referring to the consent decree that we know as Callahan, right?
Yep.
Where,
But the real decision, everyone talks about the 1979 decision by the judge said affirmatively that there is a state obligation to provide lodging and food. And the city, and Koch to his credit, I don't give him much credit, but his credit on that part, they met the obligation. The state has never done the obligation. So when the migrants came here, I tried to get them to sue the state, because why are we in the city being the only person dealing? You should have had a program that sent people that came to New York from Texas, Governor Abbott, to around the state, because there was an obligation under that law. And if they weren't meeting it, then let's sue them. They didn't want to do it. Why not? Well, because the politics, we get certain crumbs from the state. We don't want to take them on, all that kind of stuff. It's insane, because who suffers out on the street?
Can I ask one
Yeah,
more
go ahead.
follow-up question? Just, so we talked a bit about the 50% that, you interact with and you send through the referral placement process. Can you talk a little bit about the other 50%? What about other people who don't kind of make it through that process? What are the
When you
types of
say-
situations
The
that
ones
don't?
who are not
need a referral?
accepted.
They're still out there. They're still out there.
They're still out there?
They're still out there, and we don't give up on them. We keep going. Like I said, on fair, I'll speak for myself. There's at least a half a dozen people. If I go there tonight, they're still there. And I keep trying. I talk to them. We talk about the World Series. We talk about music, whatever. And I keep saying to them, are you ready yet? And usually what they say, it's not cold enough. In the 4 or 5 months where the weather's nice, it's not bad to sleep out in the Staten Island Ferry. But now it's getting colder. I'm saying, and the guy says to me, this one guy that I'm trying to work on, he says to me, it's not cold enough. I'll let you know when it's cold enough. So what you keep doing is keep trying. And then on a personal level, in one of the things the Hunter student, Isidro, who is the team leader up there, wrote, and he differed when I was saying that the goal here is to get the placements and the referrals, get the people who volunteer to the street. He wrote a thing, and I changed my mind on it. He said the interaction was equally important, because the interaction was to make the person feel that there's someone respecting them and that we're listening to them. And this kid made me rethink it. He's right. So we're not too worried, as long as, look at that. When I go there and I see my friends, I chat with them, and I feel good. They feel good. And so there's something worthwhile in that. But I still think that it's important to get them off the street, because we've had 2 people who died in the Staten Island Ferry area in the 3 years plus that I've been there. So
In Washington Square Park, I think that out of the remainder of the people that are, our placement rate is slightly lower than the SHAP average. It's probably around 37, 38% over the past year.
can we switch gears and talk about more specifically about Washington Square Park?
Sure.
I mean, you're making
Yeah.
that transition, so.
The people who don't accept placement or are offered placement, the number one reason I think is they get offered a placement that's far away. In the Bronx, for example, there's a lot of safe havens in the Bronx, and that's very far away and very challenging for someone that might have appointments to keep, like with either they're in a substance use program, or they have a caseworker that they're working with, or they have a parole officer that they're working with, all of those things, or they have family and friends. And they want to be closer. They don't want to be, 15 minutes away or an hour away by subway. And the second reason is that some safe havens do have 19, 20 people in a room. And that evokes the same kind of concern about their safety that a congregate shelter would evoke. So they don't accept the placement when it's offered to them in those places.
One thing we
Just to
haven't-
follow up on that one, how would they know that? They know that about the safe haven?
We
or
tell them.
You tell them that, hey.
Yeah, it's part, this is
Sure.
part of the thing is like the transparency is like Norman said, is like, we tell people you're going to be in a room with one other person. We ask them beforehand if they, if they want to, if they're okay sharing, because we say, it's not our choice where you're going to get placed. That's the Department of Homeless Services knows what's out there, what's available. And when we find out, we will tell you, we will show you, what it looks like. And we will tell you if we know anything about the place, and we'll tell you how many people you're going to be in the room with.
So one thing we haven't talked about is unhoused people who have substance issues, not who are in treatment, but who are not in treatment, or people who with mental illness who are not seeking care. How much of a role, how frequent are you seeing that in Washington Square Park or in all of the
All
SHAP?
our venues, all of the above, and some have double.
Would you say that, to Arturo's question about the other 50, would you say of that other 50%, what percent, maybe we're tossing numbers a little too casually here, but of those who really are not accepting shelter, how many of those would you say have these other issues, mental illness or substance use?
Almost all the people have these issues, but you have to distinguish even within the mental health area. There's a lot of lawyers I know, they got mental health problems. The problem is that, are they functioning? And how many of those that aren't functioning meet the requirement of imminent danger to themselves or others? And so I would say that you're probably talking about a small percentage of the people who need to be involuntarily committed.
Right.
But then, so maybe 5%, maybe a little more, depending on the venue. Then you have
a complicated area though, where they're not a danger to others. And the
themselves.
definition of what they are, whether they're a danger to themselves, is a definition to be interpreted, but they clearly have a mental illness, right?
Yes.
I see people walking down the street ranting. They're not going to come and kill me, but they're ranting and they're half naked. And I got to figure that those are people who have a mental health problem.
But I think what you do, and I try to convince Adams of this and succeed, create a really effective voluntary program. And you'll find out within the voluntary program who are the people that need to be involuntarily taken in. But if you come in, like Brian is suggesting, that you announce it as an involuntary commitment program, you can get resistance. And that doesn't help because, first of all, you don't have the beds, you don't have the services. That all comes again from Mario Cuomo. The one thing my generation failed on, when we worked out the agreement to deinstitutionalize, there should have been a written contract to provide for the community mental health services. They never did that. They saved the millions of dollars and they didn't put it into what they promised us to do. That's the failure historically. So we have to undo that again. And we have to take that on. So you have people that are out there. When you talk about Washington Square, when I went to law school at NYU, we called that area on the Northwest the pharmacy.
They still do.
Oh,
All right.
Wow.
It was called the pharmacy because it was marijuana back then.
yeah.
Okay. Then it became something more.
we grew
And
up with that.
I've been to Washington Square Park with the team there. I know my doctors are right across the street there. And when I go there, I look at that area and I don't even want to walk in
not
that
pretty.
area there.
It's not pretty.
So,
Very
I'll
sad.
touch the issue that nobody wants to touch. I have no problem if people are breaking the law, they're taking a risk and they could be arrested for that. On that same token, you got to make the distinction between who's homeless, who's a druggie, and sometimes it overlaps. But then you have to make a distinction between where they're selling, where they're using. And you have to approach it differently. And the people that are selling, bust them and take them to the full extent of the law. But then also when they put out the thing, oh, people conspiracy to kill people. I mean, how are you going to prove that? How are you going to prove it? The person theoretically who's dead isn't going to testify. And you're going to claim that you gave them fentanyl? Where's the evidence of that? But the DOJ and Trump want to make this so that they can make this another political issue.
So Sherry, talk to us about the people that you're working with in Washington Square Park.
So we are talking to the people who are talking to themselves, and I would say that the complexity of that is a person using substances, and is that why they are talking to themselves? Are they talking to themselves? I mean, there are people who are housed that are talking to themselves, just like Norman was saying. There are a lot of people out there who have mental health challenges and or are using substances, and they have apartments. And so don't see the externality of that here, because we don't, they're, for the most part, we don't see them walking around performing whatever challenges they have or exhibiting these challenges. And so if we're talking about what Norman was talking about, which is who has to be involuntarily removed because of the behavior that they're exhibiting, well, then I don't understand really. The part that I personally don't understand is how you're going to detangle that. Like, is a person under the influence of a substance that then makes them, disinhibited, or makes them, irritable, or makes them agitated? And then why would you not, also wait to see this? Because this has happened with us. Why would you not wait to catch them at a time when they are not under the influence as strongly as they have been, and talk to them? And that has happened to us a lot of times, where we have talked to people that we thought were having a struggle that maybe was not, we couldn't relate to them, we couldn't speak to them. And then we would come back 2 weeks later and we're like, oh, this person makes complete sense. I understand what they're saying. They understand what they're saying. We're just, if I was going to be the person to say like, oh, I would have put that guy in an ambulance to take him to Bellevue, I would have been wrong.
So do you see, you've been working Washington Square Park for how long, a year?
2 years.
2 years. So do you see a steady population there? Is it like a finite group of X number of people that you see all the time? Is it always shifting? I'd like to just know what your experience.
It's kind of both. There's some people that look, that they're regulars, just like Norwood finds people in Staten Island are the regulars. And those people will sometimes disappear for weeks or months at a time. And then we'll see them again. And then there are, I looked at, before I came to the meeting today, I looked over the list of the 200 people that we've probably interacted with in the last, 2 years. And I think I was able to pick through and figure out that I've met like 160 people. So that's not all.
That's not all.
No.
That's not all.
And then, the number of times I have one person's name in my, notes or something like that, it's probably maybe 10%, maybe 20%. But yeah, there's a lot of transient people walking through there too.
I want to encourage everyone else to ask questions, because I always have a million questions, and I know you guys tend to be quieter. So
you spoke a little bit about the village interagency task force. Can you also contextualize that for a bit? So I think I might have missed how you participate in that, or how long you've been a part of that.
She crashed it.
Well, yeah. We met with them, right? So
Right.
Okay, so the Village Interagency Task Force was formed by
not me.
the DA's office and
Mayor's office.
the Mayor's Office of Community Mental Health. And it's a model that I think Greenwich Village is the third one they've done in the city. They seek people who are already in the community to form a board. So in our case, there's Vanessa Warren, Brian Maloney, and Scott Hobbs, who runs the Village Alliance. And they don't provide money, they provide access. So there are 2 meetings a month, is that right? One meeting deals with infrastructure, and one meeting deals with social services. Interrupt me when I'm wrong.
No.
They're intentionally not public meetings, because in the interest of privacy and accountability and efficiency. And of course, we've had them report out to us, and they do report out. And so the infrastructure meetings might be, there's scaffolding on West 10th Street and people are gathering underneath there. How long was that scaffolding going to be up? Can we take care of whatever, the garbage, but it's infrastructure stuff. And then the meetings that I like to attend, and I'm invited as, I don't know what, I was asked to be on the board, but I didn't think that was appropriate, but I attend those. And those will be where we talk about social services, and they will have a list. I mean, this is just their practice. I don't think it's part of the design necessarily. They'll have a list of 10 or 12 people that are regulars on the street. And there'll be a lot of conversations. Where are they? Are they housed? Is there a arrest warrant out for them? Where do they stand? But right, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say that there's a detailed explanation of their
Case.
incarceration status.
So there's
A big part of it.
a balance, I would say, of a broad scope of, is this person a danger to themselves or others? Do they need resources? Have we interacted with them? How long have they been there? It's holistic.
I'd say there's a review of the person and where they've been seen and who, what has happened. But I mean, some of that information is supposed to be private. The stuff about their status in the legal system is probably not so private. I'll defer to Norman on what's private and not private, but there's a discussion about the people and where they've been in the past month.
And those
Those
names are not shared.
There are hundreds in the park. How do you pick your 10, or who picks the 10?
Well, the board of the VITF, they have people that they see often, and they bring them to they bring their names to the meeting for discussion, and then they rip up the paper at the end of the meeting. They just happen to, pick people that they know and cases that they're aware of.
It's kind of unclear what exactly the criteria are for ending up on that list, but it is the same.
Could be.
And the list is not an
arbitrary.
exclusive list. I mean,
Could
it
be arbitrary.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure that it is largely
When you
arbitrary.
came here, it felt like it was an arbitrary.
Yes, it is.
But
But I don't think there's any methodology for.
you see, for me,
They hear about through their WhatsApp group.
but the question
Yes.
for me would be,
And-
is how many times, who spoke to these people? Is there an interaction with
Right.
people? Because that would be meaningful, but
Right.
if they're just,
Right.
by watching people and then monitoring,
Yeah.
it's sort of, I get worried about that.
Yeah.
But at the meeting, there are people from DHS, there's there's Coalition for Homeless, or is it, no, it's not Coalition.
CUCS is there, and so
CUCS is there,
Goddard has occasionally been there, Breaking Ground has occasionally
and
been there.
also,
What
who's
was
the one
the
that's not,
CUCS?
Housing Works is there. I mean, there
Yes.
are contracted organizations that come, and others, SHAP is there. And it is, I think it's 1 hour meeting. It seems to be an effective forum for an exchange of ideas and for a collaboration, or coordination of services. Yes, no?
I would say that.
You're allowed to be critical.
Well, listen, what's
to
the
help you
metric
out?
for success? Let me just pose that question.
That's what we asked.
What is the metric for success? Is the metric for success that someone has been removed to become in a carceral status? Is the measurement of success that a person has been, chased away from where they frequent and now they're on a different street, which I've heard at these meetings can happen, the displacement of people that are formerly found at one location have now gone somewhere else. I mean, because for us, the measure of success is the person in a safe haven and are they receiving services that they would like to get, So that would be our measurement, that would be our
Yes.
metric, so.
I would say, well, I have heard them mention that as well, right? So-and-so's in a safe haven, so-and-so has sought shelter. But the difference with you is that they would also mention these other,
Yeah.
had they been.
But there's a lot of very capable and experienced people from the city agencies there. And the combined, forces put together, I think there's a lot of potential there. A lot of potential for people to talk to each other and kind of, work.
And
through it.
the priest at St. Joseph's is there. There's a lot of.
And the reason I kind of wanted to dig into that is because I see where it can also be somewhat arbitrary, but also I think when you know your neighborhood, you'd see areas where there's clearly drug activity happening here, right? There's clearly drug users and there has to be drug sellers. And there is a pattern of people that we see often. I've passed by corners where there's a guy that's weed for sale, right? And okay, it's to criminalize, but it's probably more than just that. So that's kind of what I'm also getting at is like, how does this list get generated? And then how does that actually result into like the New York Times article that we saw about the
19 people getting arrested.
right, and is that helping? And I don't know that the VITF is involved with that, but that those kind of things I think are also helpful to be building data or community or putting resources for that.
But
I mean,
some
the
of that-
Is
VITF
that
but I don't-
helping?
I'm not-
Is that
not to
helping
say-
is the question, right?
Yeah,
So what does
right.
that mean to you and what does it mean to,
Well, what does it
different
mean to
people.
the city? I
and
think
what
the
does it
city
mean
is
to this
not really.
neighborhood?
Yeah.
And the city, true.
I mean, I think it's a experimental program, right?
I'm still somewhat confused about these meetings. So there's one that's infrastructure, that's like totally reasonable. Why are we talking about 10 people at any random?
By the way, the 10 people is just,
Why,
that's
are they getting something out of
it's
it?
not the crux of the meeting, I would say. I would say that my experience with it is that there are all these incredible, people
Yeah, yeah.
at very high level.
I get that, they're in the room, but
And there are conversations
What end?
about different things that might help people who are out on the street. And then because this board happens to see people regularly, they get specific about these people. But I would not say that the people on their list is the only subject of conversation. Would you say that it
I
is?
guess I'm just trying to see what the point of them, is it to get all these different agencies together and communicate? Is it
The
what's,
purpose of these boards is to try to figure out how to address the problem.
okay,
But they don't necessarily, in my opinion, address the problem, because the problem is not a problem. It's numerous problems and some of it overlaps. So for example, when you're talking, for me, it's very clear. If someone's selling illicit material, law enforcement comes in and deals with that. If it's someone who is talking to themselves or has mental health problems or is using drugs, you don't bring the cops in to deal with that one initially. You deal with it differently. And then the people who are out on the street who are homeless, you need to do it this way. So you have to have that kind of stuff.
so this meeting is to sort of try to coordinate some of those different ideas to.
From what I hear,
That's my
maybe
impression.
I'll be nice. They're trying to achieve that, but I don't think they're doing it.
That's, I guess, what I was.
Well, I think that one of the issues that I keep hearing at these meetings is that there are systems that are well beyond anyone in the room. People talk about, he went to shelter, but where's the intake place? Where's the detox place? Where's the follow-up? Whereas you say, where's the continuum of care? Right? There are systems
Here's a
that,
question that you'd think that 30 high-level people in city agencies, I think, should be able to help with. I think it would help us. Where is a list of places that people can go when they ask for detox services? And they want to go now, like now. So what can we do? And that's not our focus, that's not SHAP's mission.
but of course.
If I had that
in case-
information, it would, and I could help with a referral
We
like
can
that.
have a meeting on that.
I would do it. I would do it
I
because.
had a guy one time, he came over to me, he said, Attorney Siegel, I've been hearing voices. So could you sit down with me and help me? And I said, you need a mental health expert. I'm just a lawyer. No, I'm serious. And then he said, so where do I go? And I didn't have places to send them because there aren't. And it was in the evening and sometimes the places that I've been given after 5 o'clock, there's no one to answer the phone anyway. And even if you get them in the daytime, they're going to set up an appointment 2 months from now because they're overloaded. So it goes back to what we talked about, the community mental health programs.
Yes,
They never did it.
yes, right.
That's part of the problem.
Paying for.
I think back to the earlier point about like, what are the structural problems that we can be identifying and using whatever platform we have to advocate for? I think, I was hypothesizing that maybe one point of scarcity was scarcity of safe havens, maybe locally, maybe safe havens that are more private. But it sounds like there's a scarcity of mental health beds. So there's like one pathway.
Drug treatment programs.
So one avenue for advocacy or structural change is addressing those points of scarcity. but another is more just logistical coordination. Like maybe the Joint Command Center should be able to offer not only referrals to a safe haven, but also referrals to drug treatment and mental health treatment. Like if there was one place that you could call and you could get whatever that person needed, like insofar as those things exist,
Well, what
as we try to advocate
about the
for.
Office of Mental Health, and what about
But
the
I think it's like, if there's all these different places and
different agencies
And
that you would think that would get, and we've asked for that.
yeah, but it sounds
And
like
we don't get it.
maybe the siloing is impeding the.
I don't know if it's siloing. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a reluctance to provide the information, but maybe it just doesn't exist and it requires, a team of lower level people or interns or whatever to create it. I've seen the data. There's a huge, the state level Office of Addiction Services has a huge database out there. And Oasis, right? The list. And so I've tried to filter. It's a pain in the neck to use. It's really hard to use.
I was
tried to
referred to it.
filter.
I was like, I wouldn't know where to start.
I started. I made a list. I made a list of 225 places, and I was like, okay, should I start calling these phone numbers? Because I don't know what the criteria are for admission to these places. I called probably about 5 or 6 places, and to find out how you would get someone into them.
I have a question. Have you heard of something called yourpeer.nyc, a guy named Adam Bard? So he came to a community board meeting, and I've spoken to him since he's in Brooklyn, and he started a website that is designed for unsheltered people, unhoused people, and it is supposed to be anyway, I'm going to put you in touch with it because
that sounds great.
It's a resource for people. And it's not an app because they don't want anyone to have to register for it, but it's supposed to have peer-reviewed list of directories and places you can go and stuff. Okay, that's just an aside.
Yeah, that's
I'll do
actually
that too.
great. I see what you got there, and the map is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to give
because
this
that
to
helps
you.
with some of the issues that we talked about before, which is that people will go somewhere, but if it's an hour away by subway, maybe there's going to.
And apparently this also has reviews, like it's a good place, it's a bad place.
Also good. We've seen that on TikTok, actually. If you ever want to, there's a TikTok thread or two where people who have been in shelter or in safe havens
I can make
openly
a pitch,
speaking about
make
it.
a pitch for
What
the
it's like.
community boards.
Yes.
Community boards should be working together citywide, at least borough-wide, and then putting out statements periodically on some of these issues of public concern, because that would really make an impact. The boards that I've gone to, they're great. It's so much work.
We tried doing it like 3 years ago. We had
Try it again.
multiple CB. Remember?
Yeah, 3 and 5 or something.
Yeah, 4 and 5, 3, 4, 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think.
2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, East Village, us.
I got you,
you know,
but
4
what
and
about
5.
Upper,
But we just started with those. You know how hard it is to find, to schedule a meeting with 4 community boards? It's really, really hard. In fact, we only got 3 of them there.
But what I've learned, and I hope this comes out, whenever you go public on anything, it's got to be reflective of the racial mix and the gender mix of the city.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So even when we're looking around here, it might reflect this area, which is cool.
Right, I
But
understand.
what I'm talking about, why aren't the community boards speaking on substantive issues and playing a role
We're
on?
frivolous. I'm just kidding.
No, I mean,
Even on big systemic issues.
Yes, because you doing that and putting out periodically 3 or 4 times a year, a joint statement about issue A, B, or C, whatever, it would have such impact. And it would also get leaders.
I know.
I think the structural community board's charter mandate and the composition of community board members and how we operate, and I don't know that I think there might be higher return on investment avenues to pursue the structural change that are needed than trying to get community boards to become the vessel of this political advocacy. I think the board, it's not our muscle, and it's not our.
But
But
we
it's
should have
something
a
worth
conversation. I
thinking
don't know
about.
why it shouldn't be your muscle.
Because it's just the structural reality of the charter mandate of community boards. It's what we do.
We're allowed to do
I'm not making a normative statement. I'm making a
We created
descriptive statement.
the Civilian Credit Review Board because I went to 134 community board meetings. committee,
That's
then the
fun.
full board. That's how we created the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And I never wanted to go, especially to the outer boroughs. But as soon as I got there and I came back, I was feeling that's what democracy is about. That's the people are involved. And that we got 15 resolutions for an independent civilian complaint board. And that's what got Valone to eventually back then say, we're going to support this stuff. I mean, it can happen. You don't need all of them. You get a dozen or 15 that work together.
Right.
Right. So I think if there were a particular campaign, and we see this in advocacy all the time of different groups taking a particular issue, like,
Well, and even community boards. I mean, we have received many
Yeah.
resolutions.
30
where it says, sign on to
community
this
boards have
process.
said universal daylighting should pass, and it hasn't passed yet. But I think the question is like, what is the CCRB equivalent? What is the thing? What is the specific
Entity.
or ask or legislation that we should be endorsing? And we can write a resolution, but we can't be the engine of that.
We can.
Well,
But you're saying a group like ours.
We wouldn't
You
create the
spent-
legislation, but we
You
could.
spent an hour plus with us about the homeless, the street homeless people. Get a coalition of community boards, even if you disagree with our views, and go with Brian Settlin, God forbid. But if you did, in the context of that,
I don't want to take that talk on. That one I'm not taking.
well, I'm not asking you to take it on.
That's a long.
Okay, we
It's a long
define the
discussion.
roles. Your role's a certain thing. With where we're going in this country right now, we don't have the legislative branch of government. We don't have the executive branch, and we don't even have the Supreme Court. All we have is us, the people. So we have to start thinking a different strategy. When I was a young lawyer, we ran to the Supreme Court of the United States. We didn't care what Mississippi court said. We went to the Supreme Court. We had 7 people who understood what civil rights were about. It's now totally reversed. They got 6 people, we got 3. We're not going to win those things. Maybe we'll win birthright citizenship. So what we have to do is look to the new institutions, community boards. I've always been for community boards. You should fill the vacuum, create that kind of dynamic. If the legislative people, even locally, are afraid to speak out on certain issues, fill the void. You've got a lot of bright people. My wife's on a community board. It's amazing how much time she spends in going to the committees, to the full board. She
Reading
comes
and
back,
writing
she's now in her
resolutions.
second year. She says to me, I didn't realize how hard they all work on this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so use it. You know, I'm sitting here, this is a group of people, you got 8 or 10 people. You're smart, you care. That's why you're here. So fill the void. We need the void. We don't have any of the institutions that we used to have. Create new institutions.
But as
Way to
your
go.
role as disseminators of information too is powerful as well, you know, along with that. it's
Hold
like,
press conferences,
because-
learn how to cultivate the media.
That's.
Let these young people do the social media. I can't do it.
I want to just try to recap where we are. It's 8:00.
Good luck.
I know you want to do your outreach tonight.
Oh, I actually don't do tonight,
Oh,
but
you don't do tonight.
I think
Someone
has
does.
another-
Anyway, sorry. Is there,
This
are
is
there,
important.
are there other questions that people have or points you want to make? I feel like we've learned a tremendous amount tonight. Thank you, both of you, for your time. Sherry,
Don't
you
be
and I
like
can
the
keep
other boards,
talking.
no follow-up.
It's specifically about the neighborhood, you know, I'm in the district. I live in the district, so, and I'm a community member as well.
And what is your background that brought you to this?
Well, those are actually 2 separate questions.
Right.
What brought me to do this was a person right outside my apartment who was suffering from various challenges and was an unhoused person and was living on a bench. And I just took some time to get to know her. And this was a person that was one of the people that didn't want to go inside. And it took about 8 months, and working with her caseworker from one of the nonprofits that does this part of the month. She accepted supportive housing. She filled it all out. She got through it all. But I just felt like, you know, I've also been part of groups that have utilized 311 and all of the, you know, levers that a community member can pull to air grievances about conditions that you don't like or that you regrets. And I just thought that that was not going to be satisfying in this case. And I didn't want to do that. So I thought, what else was out there? What else can I do? And then about the time that I had gotten some traction with this person, I met Norman, and I realized that this was more This felt like a better way to actually make a tangible change, both in the neighborhood that I lived in and to the person that is affected most by the condition of homelessness. Because a lot of people talk about homelessness as being a quality of life issue for themselves. The people that are housed talk about that. And I think that perspective of what it's like to actually be unhoused and the challenges that you face as an unhoused person, I think that voice is way down there. So I'm happy to be able to elevate that.
What's your professional background?
I work as an art director in media, television mostly.
Cool. Thank you.
Where was the bench?
Pardon?
Where was the bench where she was living?
It was a few blocks away from here. And
You don't have to share where you live.
it'd be better because, you're well aware that people are being targeted and she's not there anymore. She's not there anymore, but there are people still in that area, so.
Kiki raised her hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, please. That'd be great. I'm sorry. Apologies to.
Hi, Kiki.
Kiki?
Thank you. I'm a grateful volunteer advocate with the Street Homeless Advocacy Project. I'm so thankful that you're all so smart and receptive and do care. And humanizing the other is so important. I do think that on our website, there is a very simple form. And I know I used to live on Minetta Street until after 9/11. It was too much for me. And so I came to Brooklyn, and that's where I've been ever since. But I spent a lot of time in the park before and after the 6th precinct installed their multiple weird things there, and it's not that effective, but that's another story. I've also buried yellow fever victims' bones that were found on excavations in the park. So I love that park, and it's a fascinating place. So our community board, CB6 here in Brooklyn, there's a newsletter that Mike Raccioppo sends out. I think actually Norman receives it, even though he's on 72nd Street, West 72nd Street. But on our website, we do have a contact form that's very simple. And in that, folks could either, if any of you, I implore you, come out for a night and see whether if you don't feel comfortable being in your community, go to Staten Island Ferry, just see what it's about, because it's so abstract, like homelessness, drugs, mental illness. These are just words. But when you start to dig into the stories of the people and the human element, I really always say at least once a day, most people don't realize, unless you're rich and have a trust fund, how close anyone is to becoming homeless. It just takes a fire, a loss of a loved one, a string of bad luck, losing a job. There are folks out there who are not a danger to themselves or others. I think that's the minimum. That's a very low number. I see the same people as you, Susanna. I take the ferry from Red Hook to Wall Street every day in the morning, 6:30 in the morning. And I take the 2-3 to the 1 to Columbia. And my son gets on the B61, and I go off on my way, and I do a lot of outreach on my way to school, and I see those same people that you mentioned on the train talking to themselves, but about violent, scary things. I haven't seen that before. So in any case, my point is the contact form on the website, which is shapnyc.com, there are little check boxes where people can schedule a presentation. If there's a neighbor in their community where they see someone and they want someone from SHAP to reach out. But that's the best thing. If you do have a newsletter, maybe just see if people want to give back a little bit. Sherry has one person I met on Halloween last year, Jessica, who lives just north of you all. And she's been going to Washington Square Park, and it's been effective. And, we don't look for volume or metrics. I'd rather have fewer people who care about what they're doing than a bunch of people who are just out there putting butts in beds, as I say, which is kind of the methodology of the paid outreach workers, paid, by the city. And in the chat, I put so many resources. I'm sorry to blow up your chat, but there's a lot of stuff in there, especially a city council oversight hearing meeting that took place regarding the funding and how funds are disseminated throughout. We look at the salaries and scandals about not our people at DHS. The Joint Command Center are amazing, and our partnership with them is wonderful. There are outreach workers from other organizations that are paid that I've connected with. They've contacted me and said, "How did you get her to come inside? I've been talking to her for 3 weeks." You know what? Sometimes it just takes a woman. Sometimes it just takes a man who's Black. Sometimes it takes a Jewish 80-year-old lawyer. You know, you never know who's going to be that person who's going to break through that barrier of trauma and distrust and pain. It is not easy to live on the streets. It's terrible. And the harassment and isolation, there's my son. So yeah, I would just implore you to try to go out with us sometime, pick a team and please share the contact form because that's the best way, and we'll share it amongst ourselves and get people connected. And you guys are just so great. I wish every community board meeting was like this. You're just really a model. So thank you so much. And thank you, Norman. And Sherry, because Sherry's the superstar of Washington Square Park. She's so patient and caring.